Welcome to the Stephen Shiels radio show. Today I've got Elisabeth Kelvin back on. How are you, Elisabeth?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good to have you back on the show. How's the whole pandemic going in Vienna so far since we last spoke?
Yeah, no better, no worse. It's
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of people who are um, waiting to get vaccinated,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have a lot of vaccines available. Europe is lagging behind, I think, in a lot of ways. But everyone's wearing their masks, and we're getting tested every week, and so we're just waiting,
Mm.
playing the waiting game.
Every week,
So yeah.
testing everyone, are they?
Well, they're testing everyone who is, what they call in in translation a flesh-friendly
Mm.
industry.
Mm-hmm.
So hairdressers, all those sort of people, physiotherapists, obviously, holistic therapists, but also teachers and preschool teachers. So yeah, so everyone's getting tested. Children are getting tested sometimes twice a week, which is really good.
Mm.
Um, and but yes, so they're having a lot of trouble keeping up even with the testing, and it's pretty tricky.
Mm.
And a lot of people have that, they're just sick of it. We have been having every weekend we've been having anti-government protests along the lines of you're telling us too many, giving us too many rules, we're losing our freedom, and they're not helpful in creating a pleasant environment, if you
Mm.
know what I mean. And there are a lot of people who are listening to information that's actually not accurate, not sourced correctly, and that sort of
Mm.
thing. So we have a mixed bag here. There are people who are completely 100% behind getting vaccinated and want everything to be, safe as possible, and anticipate that the future is going to be different for everyone, whether
Mm.
you're playing sport, playing music, working in a bank. But there are others who are saying this is all a hoax, it's a lie, and we have these people, quite a lot of people who are going along that sort of line. So yeah, so we're just playing the waiting game to live
Yeah,
for
same,
the next day.
same thing here in Australia too. The Prime Minister Scott Morrison, I think he said he wants the AstraZeneca vaccine and the Premier wants the Pfizer vaccine.
Hmm.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the big problem is we don't know how things are going to happen in the future. We don't know where viruses are going to go.
Mm,
Um, but having said that, and just winding back a little bit to the idea of music and culture and how it relates, um, the musicians and artists are actually a really powerful source, and writers,
mm,
people doing something creative. We're actually a really powerful source for governments to lean on or to engage with, because we're used to this unstable situation. We're used to not knowing what's going to happen next. From the point of view of we don't know financially. Obviously, we many of us have to struggle,
mm,
because if we're freelance, we don't know where that is going to happen. Almost everybody has had financial insecurity at some point in their career.
mm,
But we also don't know when we engage, when we begin an art work or a painting or
mm,
a text or a music composition. We don't know where it's going to go.
mm,
We may have a plan, and it may not go that way, and that's okay. And we're actually um, if we embrace that uncertainty and that sense of unpredictable um, activity,
mm,
whereas governments and high, corporation, they only have one thing, and that is to gain profit and control.
mm,
And if they were to expand out differently, in a different way, in a more creative way, the way we engage, like what if this happens? What if this would happen? What if I've introduced this idea? let's try it and see. Let's notice. Let's attend to these variations, and let's see what happens. There may be a big difference and an improvement in the way that people are engaging with the rest of the society.
Mm.
So yeah, there's always hope in that direction. Um, just yesterday, I was talking to a real estate, an urban developer, and he's doing a master's, and it's focusing on real estate and property. And he said the hardest part is that all the information that he has is not that interesting because it's all geared towards capitalism.
Mm.
And what he wants is, he said, I actually want to do my thesis in music, but I don't know how to tie that in with real estate.
Mm.
And so I think there are people out there that want to think creatively, but the information for them is not packaged in a way that is creative. So governments and large corporations, they actually have a source within us, something that they could use to really change the complexion of the way people do business.
Mm.
Whether they do that or not, I don't know.
Yeah, well, things are always evolving and changing, Elizabeth. I just hope the music industry gets back to normal and go watch a concert again. That's all.
Mm. That's going to be interesting to see if people are going to be willing to huddle in
Mm.
um, I mean, let alone I think there'll always be places where people want to dance and sing and be close to each other and drink and be really um, in a place where we would consider social distancing as just I think people always want that. They kind of need that. But the idea of going to an opera with those, small seats, dark room, sitting there for 4 hours in the same place amongst people, and you're going to hear somebody coughing because that's how it works,
Mm.
especially in the quiet sections of the music. Um, Whether that's going to be different, it'll be interesting. Maybe places will have, one person, one plant, one person, one plant.
Oh God.
Maybe maybe there'll be a difference in the way that people are seating. Um, but yes, I mean, would you like to go to a concert for like a 3 hour concert and have to sit with a mask on? I mean, would that at all um, lower your pleasure or interest, or whether that would that be something you would say, no, I'm not going to do that?
I'd say yes because I did it last year and I was like, yes, this is the best night out. Um,
Okay, yeah.
Actually, no, I didn't wear a mask at that concert, although it was encouraged
Mm.
at the Kudos Bank Arena, but they never had that law in. But yeah, I'd do it, Elizabeth, if I could
Yeah,
watch a live concert, not on a Zoom. It's not the same.
yeah. Yeah, it really isn't the same. I'm actually currently there's an exhibition in Budapest. It's actually a physical exhibition
Mm.
of graphic scores, and they've they're graphic scores from pretty much all around Europe, and they have this wonderful exhibition, and then they've turned it into a virtual exhibition too, so you can go virtually. And I know the difference between walking through and seeing the work right there in front of you and being able to go right up close to it, and then using those virtual footprints, which are always men's footprints, the
Mm.
classic ones, the heel and it's just not the same. I mean, it has its novelty and its excitement to go up close to a painting while you're just sitting, you know, next to your computer. But
Mm.
it isn't the same as going up and seeing it framed and being able to interact with the person next to you and say, "What do you think?" And so so that's slowly but surely we are getting things happening here. And if I could, I would go physically. Prefer to go physically with a mask and social distancing than do it online.
Have
Um,
you mentioned you got protests happening? It seems to me in Europe and the United States, the governments don't take the pandemic very seriously like we did in Australia and New Zealand. I don't know why.
No, I think part of it is that the Europe has the history of these pandemics.
Mm,
There's the Spanish flu that was just killed so many people. We've had flus, we've had all these things come through, and I think also it's just a huge population. And so you have people who have, it's a critical mass. Once you get enough people who say it's a hoax or it's just the flu, you get people who say, okay, well, I'm not going to listen to what the government says. And I think the
mm,
other thing is that the Australia is still able to, for all the things that the government does that you think, oh my gosh, they've got rocks in their head, to put it nicely. The Australians and New Zealanders tend to rally behind the government to some extent.
mm,
And when it comes to something really important like a pandemic or a catastrophe, or like the bushfires or something like that. Um, but in Europe, there's just constant, no, you don't touch my freedom, don't touch my freedom. It's a little bit like what happens in America.
mm,
This idea of freedom, it takes on a different shade. And then we have places like Sweden. They didn't even bother with the masks. They didn't
mm,
close down or anything, and they just said, let the pandemic run its course, which it did. They had the highest death rate per capita in Europe,
I thought it
and
was Italy was the highest.
it, yeah. Well, Italy, that's where it started, so they didn't know.
Mm,
They didn't know what was going on. Where it actually started in Lombardy, that whole area is it has a lot of older people as well as it's like a lot of retirement villages, a lot of retirement area places, and so there were a lot of people who died because of that. But the other thing in Sweden, a lot of people died because, and older people as well, because in Sweden there's a tendency to say, if you're sick and you're going to die, die. And it's a cold. It's to Australians it seems cold.
mm,
We have such a Australians have such a complex culture of hospice care and pain relief, and it's one of the, I think, leading places for old age care in some ways. It
mm,
really does try to make everything as comfortable as possible and as at least as interesting as possible,
mm,
for older people. But yeah, but I think that there have been places like Sweden, and I think Denmark too was a little bit um, with the masks. They weren't so strong. Yeah, people just died, and that's
mm.
fine by them.
Yeah.
It's not fine by Australian standards. So
Mm,
yeah, so we it's this pandemic has really revealed differences in culture and thinking in places where we thought, well, we're all the same. We're not. We're not all the same. We're not all equal. Um, and
well,
I think
well,
it's been interesting that way.
Elizabeth, 2020 was probably one of the most weirdest years of my life. I'm 27 years old now. I
Mm.
started a company, and I'll probably look back when I'm 50. I'll be like, oh my God, people are just
What was that young?
nuts. Yeah. Never
Well,
even.
if you can start a company in a recession or in a pandemic, and it can, you've got 3 years to go, like 3 years down the track, and you can still make it thrive, then it's going to be okay.
Mm,
But I think probably it puts things in perspective, doesn't it? You sort of when you start up a company. I know my husband and I started up our Titan Chunky Compositions business in 2000, and we started in Australia. That was, I think, there was a recession going on. There were some really difficult financial things going on at the time. But we thought, okay, well, if we can make it now, we can make it anytime.
mm,
Like if it's bad now, then it's got to be better. And it worked. It survived. But when you're actually in the middle of, or at the beginning stages of developing your business, nothing else matters. You're just so focused on it. And
Mm.
so when you have something that's rubbing up against it and contradicting what is important, like a pandemic and, people who are getting sick or dying or something, it really puts it into perspective. Um, a business is not a thing; it's a dynamic process that you engage with and weave through your life. It's not the whole sole point of your life.
Mm.
So maybe at your tender age and in this time, it's been a fantastic perspective builder for you,
It
and it won't take
has.
over your life. Even if it does work, that's great. If it doesn't, you're not going to, jump off over the gap or whatever.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the thing is, I don't have any debt on the business.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the way to go.
as an entrepreneur, at least I can go to buy a cup of coffee. I'm not flat broke,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
But the end goal for Shields Productions is to be able to put the food on the table
Mm,
like
yeah,
you would
that's
when you were working.
an honourable goal.
Mm. I'm not one of those entrepreneurs that say that, oh, I've got to make $1 million a year to be happy. That's just not me. Don't know why.
Well, it's if anything is to go by when you look at people who have made a lot of money,
Mm.
it doesn't necessarily bring happiness. If happiness is something that is even something that can be brought to you, um, it's because it is a temporary state. But I think what is important about a business is that it makes viable or presents to the public what you consider viable and your ability to share that viability
Mm.
so that when you create, it's not something trivial.
Mm.
So even if you make it at a loss, I mean, if you look at the business structure from a point of view of a property developer, I mean, these rats are in debt up to their eyeballs. Look at Packer. His how much he had 1.4 billion
Mm.
in debt. I mean, I don't even know what 1 billion in concept. How does that? What's that? 100 million or whatever. It's like, how do you even conceive that? If someone gave me even like 100th of that, I'd never have to do anything I didn't want to get. And I could
Mm.
just live my life of complete utter quality and satisfaction. And yet somebody can be in debt that much, and they still consider themselves, and other people still consider themselves, despite their poor reputation and their breaks and their inconsistencies, they're still considered a viable investment. Like somebody would actually go and say, well, I'll bail you out because I think you're going to actually make some money for me. Where? How?
Mm.
When you've got somebody like you who's doing a small enterprise with something that people want,
Mm.
a sort of simple um, sort of on demand kind of thing.
Mm.
Why is this not viable? And I think that's why businesses and small businesses and artists making businesses and taking themselves seriously is a really important part of the our culture, musically and well, creatively in general.
Mm.
Um, the thing in Australia, it's probably still there. What I always found was people would say, "Are you what do you do?" I'd say, I'm a musician, and then they'd say, "Yeah, but what do you really do?" Well, what I really do is I make music, and then I do art as well. And they'd
Mm.
go, "Oh, well, you must have rich family, or you must have another part-time job somewhere, or you must be in debt." The concept of making money from doing music and art in Australia is still not taken seriously. There's always in the back of someone's mind, oh, there's a catch somewhere,
Mm.
and I'm going to find it. Now in Austria, it's in smaller towns outside of Vienna. There is still that. So universal. It's a sort of an archetypal understanding. If you're not, doing something useful in the flesh-friendly industry, or or you're not a banker or a financing mogul or something. If you're in the creative area, you must be just doing it for fun.
Mm.
But in some of the bigger cities like Vienna, Salzburg, Graz, people take you seriously. You say, "Oh, I'm a musician." Good. What do you do? Where can I see your stuff?
Mm.
When do you next perform? And they are right into the zone of being curious.
Mm-hmm.
They're not asking. They're not doubting that you can do it. They're waiting until they see it. When they do see it and they like it, they will comment. If they don't like it, they'll just back away.
Mm.
So, but it's not a matter of the prejudice of the fact that, oh, you're creative. Oh, that must mean you just do something like this on the side, because it's inconceivable for me to understand that somebody would dedicate their life, hours and hours and hours of doing something, for so little money, so
Mm.
little, dollars per hour. And
Now I'll just switch the light on. Sorry.
yeah, no, go for it. So we're here with Stephen Shiels,
That's better.
having a wonderful conversation on a Saturday morning in Vienna.
It's been hot in my place. I'll switch the light off. I suppose if you take your company seriously, people take you seriously. You got Hans Zimmer. I mean, he'd probably charge, I don't know, $50,000 to write something for a film, which is pretty cool to be Hans Zimmer. But he treats it like it's an actual business.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Well,
like.
I think that's also what's important is when what you've said there is actually, if I want to pick up on that thread, he thinks it's important. And when he does it, then other people will. And it does have to start from yourself. You have to consider what you're doing important. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I think it's not just a matter of a kind of a feel kind of thing. It is something that you put into practice. For example, I just got nominated for this little film festival, Liftoff Film Festival, and it's an international but virtual, obviously, film festival at the moment. And it's a tiny little film it's a 1 minute film that I've put in, and I was nominated for 2 categories. And it's if I had been just do a video, I would have probably not even investigated in whether I could even apply for these festivals. And but because I run my business all very loose. When I say business, it's really it's not technically a business in the formal way anymore. But I consider it the same way because I've trained myself to consider whatever I do as serious. It was very easy. It was all set up. I've got it all laid out, what I have to put into a proposal or an application form. It takes me minutes to do it now instead of, well, where did I put that thing? And I've got all the categories worked out. Okay, if it's a film, if it's a focused on music, if it's focused on art, if it's, I've got it all worked out, so I can just at my fingertips through my website or through my other sources. It's all there because I'm treating it like a business. Where am I going to make the most money? Put a little bit of focus on that. And I also think that a business can be, in a way, it can be, without being formal, it can be something that is structured. So the business is within yourself. You can have your own very clear structure of what you want to do and how you want to go about it. Because you could spend a lot of time going down rabbit holes and dead ends, and I've done all that too. Where people say, "Oh, I can help you get your business, off to a great start and have more interest." And yeah, if you have to pay for it, sometimes, very often, you're not going to get what you expect. But,
Yeah, that's the problem with the business world too. What you find too is in the beginning you're running at a loss.
Yeah.
And I found since starting, I'm working for free,
Mm.
but eventually it will turn into a profit sooner or later.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are places, for instance, here in Vienna, we have a pretty good department that helps small businesses like small art galleries, small concert spaces, and there's one place that I get involved with on a regular basis. It's called Kunstbetrieb, and so it's just means art business basically. And it's a beautiful small space that could fit maybe about 50 people. And the person who runs it, he organizes an improv festival. He organizes art, music evenings, exhibitions in this space. And the funding, where he gets the funding, because he pays all the people who are involved. Everybody gets paid every time, and so he chooses who he invites, but he's never going to get. He's not going to get um, a rush of people because he's not paying a huge amount, but he's always going to get a really nice mixture of people because he's attracting people because he's going to pay. How does he pay? Well, it's not his own money. He's not. He actually doesn't do it for a profit. He just does it enough to pay himself to keep it going and to rent the space. And the government will give him some funding.
Mm.
So he goes local, through to the general. Mostly it's state funding and and local funding for the region. And it's once you've set that path in motion, it seems like because the state knows that that place is going to attract a group of people, it's going to be, if not viable, because I don't know whether viable is even a word in this, but it's going to be legitimate and it's going to be ongoing and it's going to increase the general um, intensify the culture of contemporary music in or art in Vienna, then they'll continue to fund it.
Mm.
So that's a really nice part of Vienna. We do have a lot of opportunities to try and get funding if we are a business, if we're a critical mass kind of business, and the funding tends to go towards people who are doing contemporary stuff, right on the edge there, and they're doing it in collaboration with another kind of group or in some sort of, we call them verein, like a club here, and that's really good. That seems to work very well. In Australia, I'm not even sure what the case is with the. I know Victoria is pretty good with arts fundings, but what's happened with the Australia Council?
Yeah,
Do
there's
you
not
know?
much going on. I've applied for some funding too, but I'm going for another one with APRA at the moment for songwriters, and they're very, very
Mhm.
picky. They want it to be
Mhm.
300 words exact.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of proofreading with that.
yeah.
I think the hardest thing is writing in a formal way. I think the paperwork
Yes, it is. There's actually an Victoria. You probably know him, Charles McInnes.
sounds familiar.
Yeah. He actually has a service. He helps people write things
Mm,
and to make them work within that proposal format. He's excellent,
mm,
really, really good, and very fine writer. And he's also a composer and trombonist, living in Melbourne. But that sort of thing is really good. That's where you can get help, and I would highly recommend. Not that
mm,
I'm telling you what to do, but I would highly recommend that you get somebody to read your stuff, because sometimes you'll write something you think, oh yeah, and then they'll go, but what does it mean? You've just turned it into a complete circle of meaninglessness.
mm,
And you go, but it means so much to me. I can see all those spots. Yeah, but this makes no sense.
mm,
You said this on one side and this on the other. You
mm,
can't have both. So it's really good, especially 300 words is really hard. It's almost easier to write like 2,000 words.
mm.
and because you've got padding and you've got, you can actually really flesh out related ideas. 300, you actually have to, like, it's a walnut. It's got to be, everything's got to be there.
Well, at least
And
I've got a portfolio on Start Now and work on
yeah,
Spotify to show that, hey, I've done something. There's been a few times I'll apply for a grant and then I get a phone call. They complain, oh, we didn't get enough information. That's frustrating
right.
too.
Yeah, yeah, that is frustrating. But sometimes enough information can be
Mm,
like, it can be sometimes their code for
mm,
saying, um, you don't fit our profile of the type of information we want.
mm,
Um, I've had some strange rejections on you. I mean, it's normal. That's part of, yeah, what, 90%. And for a while there, I was getting about like 25% success. It was like, whoa, this is like,
mm,
I'm queen of the proposal. But that happens in waves. Most of the things are rejected. Um, but one was to say, oh, we had um, so many applicants that we only chose students.
mm,
They never asked in the proposal whether you were a student. It was just it was an open call. They never asked whether you were studying or whether you were working or whether you're unemployed or whether you were just, I don't know, some sort of institution. They never asked any of those questions. Um, and then suddenly the rejection note says, yeah, we've decided to only students. Now, how would they have chosen students if they didn't know that people were students?
mm.
Well, I mean, so sometimes you hear the outside the standard. Oh, we really appreciate it. Blah blah blah. It's not your quality. Blah blah blah. Sometimes you get these strange little messages, and sometimes you just don't know.
Mm,
It's very much like a lottery. But what does seem to happen, there's a tendency is with proposals, is that the proposals that do work are the ones that have people who've worked before. Like if you've had a successful one, there's a tendency for that to have a roll-on effect. So making sure that you highlight all your previous successes, that seems to be something that to emphasize that you've achieved this level of recognition.
mm.
Um, that's what they're looking for a lot of the time. But it's not easy, and it's nice if you don't have to rely um, on outside funding. If your actual product or what you deliver, your service, your expertise, if that's what provides the income, and that's an ideal situation. So people come to you because they come to you first, and they come to you because they want what you've got. So, I mean, to me, somebody coming to me and saying, I'd like you to write me a piece, or I'd like you to paint me something, that to me is a far more healthy and eventually probably more profitable approach than if I were to apply for funding to get somebody to commission me to write them a piece.
Mm.
And I, you can already, it already gets murky because you've got all these different elements, coming into it. And then you've got two sets of conditions. So you've got the conditions of what the commissioner wants, and then you've got the conditions of the grant.
Mm.
And so I think that can send people bonkers.
But you know what's
But
hard too with social media, Elizabeth, with Facebook and Instagram, how the whole algorithm's changing. I think it's getting harder to get noticed now because
yeah,
unless you spend money to then boost everything, and people don't want to do that.
no, no, and I think right now with the like you can't predict that even if you pay for something.
Mm,
Um, and also with when you're paying for advertising and you're paying for boosting in a social media platform, you don't know if it's real people anyway.
mm,
the whole idea is somebody's making money, otherwise they wouldn't charge. So they're, it could be just bunches of robots banked up ready to,
Mm.
press like. And like Instagram is a most peculiar one, because you can get sort of nothing, no response. I tend to use Instagram as a little bit of a is it as a bit of a litmus test. So I'll put something out and say, what, hey, just what do you think, kind of thing. And because there's no power in there to provide links within a post, so you can't give people links. You can only give them what you present, just the way that is. And sometimes I'll put something up and it'll be like, virtually only two people will see it, and you go, oh, okay, how did that happen? And then other times you'll put something up and 1,000 people will have seen it.
Mm.
It's like, but how? What's the difference? That's basically the same kind of stuff. Um, so sometimes when I say litmus test, I'm looking more in terms of people's comments, or the, the people, the consistency of the people or the people who are they more concerned with art, or are they more concerned with music? And it's very boutique and very specialized, because I don't have a lot of people, so it's easy for me to click on the few people that like something and find out what their interests are as well. But there's not much you can do about that. I think probably after this pandemic, when people go back to live, it's going to be a different thing too, because really people sell CDs, sell artworks, even to some extent sell their books through live concerts, exhibitions, book readings. All these things, they're the things. And when you think about radio, you have a culture program, and like Andrew Ford or something, he'll come on and he'll do a wonderful program, and he'll have some guest come on. The guest talks. What are they talking about? Their next concert or their next big thing, and then there's a plug for it. And what is the plug for? A live performance. So that, I think, is why the social media thing is hang in there, because it does actually get people to the live performances. Just right now, there are very few live performances, and I think people do get saturated with their online performances, unless they're on a track to they intend to listen to every single performance of the Met Opera, free online
Mm.
series. That if people who are into that. There is actually, because I run a weekly, having said that, I run a weekly Zoom online free improv session. We've been running since March last year, and it's expanded, and it's the opportunity to meet people from all around the world, which wouldn't have probably happened, has been fantastic. Um, but there are also people who are only work on live. Like, they don't even make CDs. They're just live performers.
Mm.
And the only way they make money is by people going to the bar to hear them play, or to wherever they're playing, the cafe or performance space. And they're there every week, and they've got nothing. They're just nothing. So those people who've managed to go online and put in, organize their finances so people can actually give them some money through the virtual means, they've done okay, but there's no way near it's really just the people who already followed them
Mm.
are enjoying their music. It's not like they're gathering an audience. And I don't know whether more advertising would bring more people. We can't know. We just don't know how advertising works. And have you noticed? I don't know if it's happened to me, but have you noticed that there'd be more advertising on things like Facebook and
Yeah,
Instagram?
and YouTube as well. Like, gone are
Yeah,
the days when you could YouTube and then all of a sudden video
yeah,
just comes up.
yeah,
I'm getting fed up with it, Elizabeth.
yeah.
Really am.
I know that. And with the YouTube one now, the opportunity is trial, ad free. Like
Mm,
it's like they know we don't want
mm.
it, but now they're going to pay, give us an opportunity to pay to not have it. And it's the same with a lot of, like, I use WordPress for my website, and you can pay to have the ads taken off, or you can use the free one and have the ads kept on. And it's like, well, isn't that funny? Because you
Mm.
have to pay for advertising, and yet when it comes to their advertising, you have to pay to get rid of it.
Yeah,
And if you
that's
don't pay for it in time, in money, you pay in time by reconfiguring your whatever platform you're using to minimize the ads. So
I've tried things like a virtual private network, ad blocker, yet ads still just keep coming through.
mhm,
Uh, you know,
finding ways, yeah.
I like,
And this has been um, this has been the way all ever since capitalism sort of started. So it's never been any different.
mm,
Um, I There are sometimes creative ways to get around it that, at least if they're not effective, they're at least they kind of um, tamp down the irritation that you feel.
mm,
For instance, if you get an ad, a sponsored thing on Facebook, and it's totally irrelevant to you, you still have the opportunity to comment on it, let alone hide it or get rid of it forever. But you still have the opportunity to comment on it, and making comments can sometimes be an effective way for you to get express yourself so that you feel a little bit in control. But sometimes people will come back with comments as well.
mm,
So that's sometimes interesting when you get, something about, I don't know, about a car, a new electronic car or something. It's like, as if
mm.
right now that's that. Oh yes, that's what I need is a car, you know. And I'm sure there are people out there that need a car, but what would You can
Well,
start saying things about the environment, about cars, and about how wouldn't it. So it can actually generate a little bit of a microcosm of um, social commentary, um, rather than being just going bloody thing.
mm. Well, speaking
So
of,
yeah, so engaging with what, and I think also it for me, I use it as a way
mm,
of expressing and practicing my writing skills. It doesn't hurt me. I can always get rid of the ad later or then after I've commented. I don't need to hear the response. It was just, I got an idea out. That's a pretty good idea. You can copy it. You can use it for later on.
mm.
But something has given you this impulse to write something, and I find that we gotta be sneaky and creative.
Well, well, that's it. I mean, speaking of ads, like I've started switching browser to DuckDuckGo now
Yeah,
because apparently Google's, I don't know,
yeah. I've
but
got it
all,
written right here on my notepad. Duck, duck, go.
yeah. Now,
Yeah,
apparently Google's got all your information, and I'm getting fed up with the whole algorithm. This things are just getting difficult, so I'm sick of it.
yeah. There are quite a few that are on their way to becoming better than Google.
Mm,
So yeah, and I think, well, it's when people start saying, "Oh, just duck, duck, go it," you know that then it's time to move on to another platform, because everyone has now said just Google it. I mean,
mm,
it's such a baby word when you think Google. Google. It's like
mm,
googly eyes, and it's such a it's an infantile thing. DuckDuckGo is not much better, but there is something about it that that game.
mm,
I'm gonna be careful to say fuzzy duck.
mm.
So it's got that sort of, it's got a bit more playful than Google, which is like being spoon-fed pablum from the media. It does, doesn't have a nice connotation, I don't think. Um, but yeah, when people start saying, "Oh, just duck, duck, go it,"
Mm.
to get rid of that and go to another one. But
Well,
yeah,
no,
there are lots of places.
DuckDuckGo's not tracking all your data that you're looking up like Google
Not
is.
yet. That's right, not yet.
I'd hope not, because it's getting to a point where people, well, should have privacy on the internet. Like, come on. I
Yeah.
don't want.
Well, yes, but the internet wasn't designed for privacy.
Yeah.
The internet was designed by the military for information out.
Mm,
So the whole mechanism, the whole reverse part of it, of I'm going to the internet, that was irrelevant.
mm,
It would have been a very different structure if it was about how can I anonymously find information from everywhere.
mm,
That it would, well, first of all, we'd be paying for it a lot more, even though we are paying for it through buying Wi-Fi and you know engaging in equipment and things like this, and time, of course. Um, but I think uh, that's also part of the problem. My problem is when you have things like your finance and your medical and those sort of things, where you don't have a choice how you engage in your provider, except through the internet.
mm,
And that to me is um, that can have tragic consequences, I think, in the end. I don't mind people knowing necessarily what I do, where I go. If I decide I want people to know that I'm going to a concert, but I don't want people to know my medical records
yeah,
or my
that's
financial
creepy.
records. Yeah, and while that's supposedly all protected, um, that's we're only trusting that it is. So yes, so there's going to be. I think that's going to be the next thing. Is intellectual protection is going to be the next very important issue that we're going to have to tackle, along with climate change, pandemic, um, multiculturalism, and all these major important issues,
Mm,
social rights. Yeah, it's going to be a I think we're going to find the next 50 years are going to be very interesting times.
mm,
And we'll see how things pan out between America, Russia, China, Europe, the European nation. Is it going to even still be here? What's going to happen to UK? What's going to happen to um, schools, music schools? I mean, you know that it's already so precarious. The fact that music schools are so I mean, you need this one-on-one tuition, which is very expensive compared to, say, going to a business school or even science to some degree. What's going to happen now? With this problem with social distancing, and I mean, I'm sure you had your clarinet teacher, tap you on the shoulder or touch your head, or or hold your hands, or even say, "Put your hands over mine," or put your hand on my stomach, or anything to
mm,
kind of you know all the touching that you need to really get deeply inside the learning concept of your instrument. That's going to change. It's going to be very difficult. And as you said before, it's very difficult to write words. It's going to be the thing. Is words. Words are going to be the very, very powerful tool.
mm. That's why I use Grammarly Premium to edit all my stuff.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, it's good. There's also some really great translators out there too. So when you're using other languages, they're very, very powerful tools to help you. And yes, so it's very important to say the right thing, especially now with um, virtual. Everything is, we have this to be able to talk, um, but when you're texting, it's very important, or when you're writing an email, it's very important to get the tone right,
Mm,
because it can be very difficult if you to backpedal on something that you've written down, because people have a record of it. So yes, but meanwhile, I've got a huge project coming up next year. That's next February. It's an opera, but it's a pared down opera. It's a Weber opera with a contemporary twist,
Mm-hmm.
the Freischütz, with and we're going to be doing this in Graz. And the concept is to play some of the music of the original score and some of it to do improvised. So it should be an interesting concept. And then I've got a couple of other projects that are coming up in June that have to do with graphic score and live live painting, live performance. And so most of what I've been able to do this year is, because 2020 has been such a crazy year and 2021 doesn't look like it's going to be any less crazy, is just building on these projects and getting things as prepared as possible. I've got another commission to do with my husband John Plankenhorn, to do this large scale clarinet work, and so we've got to record the music, and then also do some paintings that are attached to it that will be related to the music. So we've got there's a lot of stuff to do, but it is very different than somebody calling you up saying, "Can you do a gig next month?" It's just like, I don't even know if that's ever going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to know. And who's going? The next big question will be, who's going to get the gig? Who's been moving in the direction where they are going to be first in line, first cab off the rank when people need to call. And
well, think about the whole cruise line industry and all the musicians who are not working there anymore, and there was a lot of talent. Wonder what they're doing. Who all lost their jobs.
Very hard. Yeah, very, very difficult. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm sure there'll be a level where cruises are already starting to be booked. So that means that musicians are being booked. But who knows whether they're going to be, the same amount of pay, whether they're going to be asked to do more duties like sanitizing or whatever. Because there are a lot of jobs that are going to be different as well. When in the cruise industry, the restaurant industry, restaurants are starting to be booked, so that means some live music is going to be starting to be booked. But I think there are going to be fewer jobs. They are going to be they're going to be not as well paid, and but also there may be less people. I know a few musicians who've said, "That's it, I'm done. I'm not going to be a musician anymore. It's too much. It's way too hard. I've got this part-time job. I can turn it into a full-time job, and I can just relax. I know I'm going to get my income every month. I'm not going to go through that stress anymore. And if there's another pandemic, it would break me." So there are people who are out there who are just saying, "That's it, I'm done." So there may be a smaller pool of musicians, but there'll always be the younger ones wanting to come up. They're going to be the ones that will define the way that live music works. So we'll see what happens. It could be an interesting times. But the two things that musicians have is resilience and ability to change.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that more so than possibly all the creative arts have that more so than any other industry or any other service or any other business or any other intellectual pursuit, I suppose. So so we have some advantages.
Oh, we do. I mean, in Australia, we are lucky. to live in Australia as well with the current
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, yeah. It is. It is very lucky.
No, but yeah, I hope the cruise line industry will start back up again.
Yeah, well, it will it's definitely going to happen again because people love cruises. I mean, it's going to be really pretty much, whatever people like will come back again. It will come back. Restaurants, bars, um, cruises, parties, um, concerts, concert series. It'll all come back. It's just how we don't know yet, and how much.
Do you
Travel.
find in Vienna that when you go to a restaurant you have to check in or write your name
Yeah,
down and your
at the moment
address?
you do. Yes, at the moment you have to check in. But right now, the restaurants are closed. We're
Yeah.
still in lockdown with the restaurants.
Still.
Well, they closed down. So this is the third lockdown. So we had
Mm.
one, but during summer, um, I went to one restaurant. It was outdoors, where they weren't allowed to have it indoors. Actually, two, because I played at one. I can't believe it was actually a gig. um, and now, if you go to a restaurant, when they do open up, you will have to present a negative test.
Mm.
And then they also take your name, your email, so that they can contact you if somebody has. It's a contact tracing thing. And this is what the government, this is what the people are marching against. These sort of um, measures. They're saying this is unfair. I can't go into my local Beisel, my local bar, and get a beer without being known that I'm going to be there by the
Yeah.
government. And they don't see that it's for their own benefit. That if somebody has coronavirus, they're going to be um, traced and given the opportunity to save their health. Because if it's caught early, obviously it's going to have less problems than if it's caught later. They don't see it that way. But I think it is a little bit intrusive if you're with a group of friends. You say, "Hey, let's just go out to have a bite to eat. Let's just go out to dinner. We're all here. We might as well. We're all hungry." And then you go to the restaurant, and you've all got to show some sort of ID or some description, and one person doesn't have it. They're ostracized. They're left out. They have to go home, or you have to change your plans. So it's not good for business. It's not good for the restaurant business. It's not good for friendship circles, and it generally it will discourage people from doing things spontaneously, which is part of, I think, to me, that it's all very well to have good quality tourism and well planned concerts and everything, but to me, the culture of a city or a community is its ability to have a measure of spontaneity.
Mm.
So if I want to go just to the park and meet a friend, um, that enriches my life. It's a priceless. You can't actually even put a number on it. How wonderful the ability just to get up and let's go get a coffee. Let's go to the park. Let's just go to the beach. That type of freedom, or just let's just go to the movies. Let's go to a restaurant, or oh, there's a band playing in that pub. Let's go in. I can hear it. Let's go in. That type of spontaneity, um, that is what is really important in
Mm.
a city, in a community. And because that doesn't exist right now in Vienna, it's completely, um, everything is basically documented.
So
If it's open.
when do you guys get out of a lockdown?
Well, we're in partial lockdown. So right now, schools are open and other services are open with um, COVID restrictions. And it looks like they might be waiting until Easter before the bars and pubs open up.
God.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, because Melbourne went into a 5-day lockdown
Yeah,
as
I
well.
know. And that was good. It worked. It
Mm.
kept things kind of under control. We had people who went to the ski resorts, and people are so desperate to get out and do things that all the hotels in the ski resorts are technically closed. So you can only have day skiers, no overnighters. And yet there were people going to places where obviously they would have to stay overnight. There's no way you can get there and back and have a day of skiing. So where were they staying? And if they were staying in places that were open illegally, why would they keep any measures going? Why would they keep the masks on and all that sort of thing if they're already open illegally, quietly? So there are people spreading this everywhere in these ski resorts because people are not following the rules. So that's where I see that Australia has tended to be a little bit more supportive of the government measures, and here they're not. There are little concerts going on in Vienna quietly, little performances going on quietly. Maybe too many people, but maybe it's okay. It's just one. It's just us. Us 20 people. Little things like that. So, and then there are places like we've got galleries that are now opening up within in restrictions. So that's good. But it's hard to know because the virus doesn't have a day or a time limit or a space limit. Really, it just goes where it goes, and where there's air, there's the potential virus, and where there's a human, there's a potential thing to attack. So no one really knows how safe anyone really is. At least in Australia, because you kept the numbers down so low, it's manageable with contact tracing and with good quick action. With a small population, you're able to do that. But it's not so easy here.
Yep.
Yeah. So we just patiently wait for the vaccination.
Yeah, every country's gonna have their own vaccination.
Yeah.
What's the one you guys have?
Well, apparently we're going to be having the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca.
Same as Australia.
Yeah, but there's also talk about buying the Russian one as well, which is a little bit not sure, because it hasn't been tested as thoroughly as the Pfizer. Apparently, the Pfizer is the number one to get, but we'll see. I think now they're talking about possibility of, because of these new strains, that people might have to get 3 vaccinations.
3,
not just and the AstraZeneca one seems to have not as great an efficacy as these new strains. But also, this vaccine's only going to last for a year or two before we have to renew the vaccine. That's the nature of, like, the flu injection. So, yeah, I think it's just going to be a long time before we get back to what we could consider normal. And I think the other thing is, like, musicians in their own little bubble, in their own world, performing on stage with an audience that has been traced and carefully masked and that sort of thing. I think that sort of thing is actually not going to be any more problem than it ever has been. You get a cold sometimes when you go to a pub, because it happens. I'm not at all by any means saying that the coronavirus is a cold. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not equating it. Just the ability to get infected by something is there, always will be, but it will be lessened. But it's the travel that's the problem. Because if musicians want to exchange ideas, one of the best ways they can do that is by traveling to another country and sharing those ideas in person with each other, in groups. And that's going to be I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for musicians, is it's all very well for me to play for my little group of people that want to hear me in Vienna. But if I want to meet with somebody in Melbourne or somebody in Iceland or Hungary or Croatia, because I really want to exchange some ideas and I want to work with them on a project or something, and I really want that kind of we really want the exchange to be intense and meaningful and have wonderful ramifications and great quality results. We need to be with each other.
Mm.
And the travel part is going to be the hardest part. It's going to be expensive for musicians because it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be restricted. It's going to be unpredictable as well because there'll be times when possibly it's not possible. Like you've booked your flight or you've booked your train or something, and then it's cancelled.
Mm.
You know, because there might be another outbreak or whatever.
Yeah.
Airplanes are not being serviced as much as they normally are because they're not running, so they don't get serviced. They get serviced per kilometre of mileage or of flight. So all the servicing is. I mean, do you really want to jump on a plane that's been sitting on the ground for a year?
No, I don't. Not even a cruise ship. That's the problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
Elisabeth, I don't know if the travel industry is going to. They won't return to fully normal probably till 2024.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like that. So this is going to be probably one of the hardest things for musicians and artists. I mean, for me, I would love to just, hop on a train and go, because Vienna is the center of Europe in geographically. I can go in any direction 10 hours on a train, and I'm in an incredibly different place. And the train network here is so fantastic, and the bus connections. You can almost go anywhere, and you can within 12 hours you can be almost anywhere, even the tiniest little town, and do a little artist retreat, or a tiniest little place and go somewhere. A couple of years ago, I did it's the improvisation conference, and it was on the border of Slovenia and Croatia, and it was one of the most magical places. It was basically what this conference does. They're not allowed to call it a festival, but this conference does is that for a week they just take over a village. The village obviously is happy and welcomes them. It's not like they go, right, we're in. And it's this little village, and just outside of Zagreb, really, or halfway between Zagreb and the border. I can't remember the city, um, and on in Croatia, and it's just this little moment of you could be anywhere in the world. You can turn off um, all your internet access if you want. You can just be completely isolated with a wonderful group of musicians. And for a whole week, there's no the only structure is meal times. Everything else is on your own, and
Mm.
you can go anywhere you want in the entire village. It's a very small village, or you can go into the woods or into the wherever you want to go, into the fields, and you can just play anywhere. You can any time of the day, any time of the night, you can just play,
Mm.
and it's just one of the most extraordinary experiences. No social distancing whatsoever,
Mm.
and but it's so intense, and the people that you meet are people that you hang around with. The people you actually end up friends with them for a long, long time. It's not just a touch and go thing. You develop strong bonds, and it's just a wonderful experience of cultural exchange. And because the government there provides the funding, it's very, very cheap. So you can actually, as long as you can get there, it's basically free.
Mm.
And it's a really wonderful way of getting people, musicians, giving them something and giving them the nutrients they need to be creative, and with other like-minded people. And that's not going to happen. That sort of thing is just so far in the future, that yeah, that sort of thing is what musicians ache for, and that type of travel and being in different space. I think we're kind of going to have to fight for it. I think more than anything, we're going to have to insist that the governments still allow these things to happen within the safety protocols, because it
So
could easily slip through the cracks.
your train networks in Europe, are they like faster than Australia? Because Australia is like very slow. Apparently
Oh
you
yeah,
got
these are fast trains, absolutely express trains. Like it takes 6 hours to get to Italy from Vienna to Trieste, or 8 hours to get to Venice, and that's just a medium kind of train. um, we have super fast trains that they're getting faster and faster, but yeah, they're pretty good and they're good quality too, and they run on time, and they are pretty comfortable for the most part as well.
do you have like the bullet train like Japan? Or not yet?
Gosh, now you're stretching my knowledge. I don't know if there's a bullet train. Certainly not in Austria,
Mm.
um, but they keep they keep developing faster ones. So I don't think the bullet one is here. Maybe in France. No, I'm not sure. But they're very good, very efficient, and the buses link really well as well. We have sort of a similar thing to can't remember what the company in Australia is, but like Greyhound, we have a thing called Flixbus, which is like
Mm.
cheap overnight. You can get someplace for €30, and it's like if you caught the plane, it will cost you €250, you know. And yes, it's a bus, and it might take you hours, but you've got, you're on the bus, you just sit and think and whatever. Um, so it's possible. It's actually possible to get to these places. So, for a musician or an artist to go to another city for a weekend or for a few days or even overnight, this is a really important part of who we are. To be able to travel. So I think that's going to be a very difficult thing we're going to have to fight for,
Mm. Mm.
and keep people in their keep musicians and artists in the consciousness of the policymakers that actually develop new ways to travel. So it's going to be important.
Mm.
Probably that's going to be the number one grant application desire, is for people when they apply for things, is to apply for travel.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
once you get somewhere, there'll be people will be so happy to see you that
Mm.
they'll say, "Yeah, come and stay with me, please. I need some company." But the actual travel itself, the journey, is going to be what's going to cost money.
Yeah, look, because I like traveling myself. And I
Yeah,
hope one
it's
day I
awesome.
could travel all around Europe and Australia.
Yeah,
But I noticed the currency exchange with the euro is so expensive.
yeah, very bad. Yeah. So yeah, that's not going to change. It's probably pretty much stuck where it is. But if you save up and you do it, you never regret traveling. I mean, I never say to myself, "Oh, I really wish I hadn't taken that trip to Belgium."
Mm.
You just never say that. So it just doesn't happen. There are no regrets when it comes to travel,
Mm.
even financial ones.
Well, are you looking at traveling in the future yourself?
I'd love to be able to go. There are, of course, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to travel anywhere until um, I know I'm vaccinated. People around me are, and the travel system is safe because the majority of people is vaccinated. There are a couple of possibilities of traveling to the US to actually do this project that John and I are working on, to do it live, because right now it's going to be obviously online, virtual, recorded, pre-recorded, but to actually do it on live and have a live physical exhibition and a live performance That would be probably 2023. So that's a while away, which is not so stressful to think about that. And then there are a couple of little summer festivals coming up in Croatia, and some possible things next year, 2022, in Ireland. Some exhibitions and performances, but it's you can't really plan for them. You certainly can't book a ticket to
I
go.
wouldn't be booking
And
for anything at this stage.
no. So I mean, I've got people. We've got things starting to line up, but only in a soft way, not in a not in a concrete way, because we can't. It's not even a matter of money. It's at this stage. It's a matter of, is it possible? Will it happen? So this is going to be difficult, because if things do become possible, then there'll be a bit of a scramble for the money. But at the moment, yes, my plans to travel are very long term, and they're to do with not traveling for the sake of travel, but travel for these particular projects that I've been involved with. And so there won't be any like going off to Paris for the weekend and hanging out in the Chat Noir or something. It's not going to happen like that. It's going to be go, do the job, and come back. So yeah, as far as locally in Austria, yes, I've got some plans to go to Graz, which is about a 2.5 hour trip from Vienna. So that's not that far. That's a road trip or a train, easy to do. And I think the trains will pretty much, by summer, they'll certainly open up. And then a couple of other possibilities of travel, but only for, not for fun, and fun in the sense of tourism. It's only for jobs, for work, and so we'll see what happens.
Elisabeth, thank you for coming on the show today.
It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
It's always good to have you on. Where can people find you, and what are you working on so far?
At the moment, you can find me on my website. Usually it's www.elisabethkelvin.wordpress.com. And from there it's a portal for a bunch of other areas, such as YouTube, my YouTube channel as well, and my Vimeo channel, and lots of other different goodies. And it's all there on the website. Easy to find. And yes, and next time you're in Vienna, you can pop in.
You never know.
So yeah, it's been really interesting to be able to develop this virtual world too. The talking on camera with people live. I think musicians as usual, have developed more skills, and I think we've got even more skills once we go live and physical to meet people.